have said that no matter how beautiful the proceeding of court is, no matter how diligent a judge is in doing justice to a particular matter, if it is discovered that that court lacks jurisdiction, that is the right to entertain that matter in the court case, everything that judge has decided is total nullity. If you want to understand constitutional law very well, if you want to know the authority you can cite, and even if the lecturer is sleeping, the lecturer will know that you know jurisdiction, you must be looking at the case. For you to understand this course, you must know what we call hierarchy of courts. Hierarchy of court. If you don't understand hierarchy of court, you will probably not understand the jurisdictions of the court. Same way, if you don't understand the doctrine of judicial precedent, you will probably not understand these jurisdictions of the court. But what matters now, as it connects hierarchy, has everything to do with jurisdiction. And jurisdiction over the years has remained one of the important topics every law student and lawyers must battle in order to survive litigation. Jurisdiction is a very, very important topic when it has to do with what? Legal system, constitutional law, and then purely as a lawyer. In fact, without jurisdiction as a lawyer, there is nothing you can do. You cannot even approach any court. As a matter of fact, you won't even know a court that you approach if you don't understand and master jurisdiction. And trust me, if you are a person that are conversant with law reports, you will understand that most cases are thrown away. If there is anything that can make a court to throw away your case, it must be based on jurisdiction. That's why on today's lecture video, we are going to painstakingly discuss everything that has to do with jurisdictions. And trust me, by the end of this video, every single problem or every single difficulty you will encounter under this topic jurisdictions will be solved. Let's go on. By the way, my name is Kingsley Ifeanyi Omi. I'm currently a 400 level law student, close to my final year. And what I do on this channel is to help law students in the challenges of becoming tomorrow lawyer. In case you are interested in receiving tutorial videos and updates as concerns law and legal topics, I can advise you to subscribe. The essence is that whenever we make a video, which happens most often in Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, you will be able to receive it as a notification. If it relates to you, you can watch it and gain one or two insights from that. The question now is, when we talk about jurisdiction, what do we basically mean? Jurisdictions of court basically refers to the legal right of a court, the legal rights or the authority a court have or has to hear a particular matter before it. It basically refers to the power of a court to examine the subject matter of a case, the parties to such a case, and the geographic surrounding of where the issues that are bordering on that case lies. Basically, what I do on this channel is not to make your problem bigger, but to ameliorate it. So no need of speaking English. You may have been reading your textbook, but are finding it difficult to relate. That's why you have come to watch this video. And I'm telling you that whenever you want to check jurisdictions, simply see jurisdiction this way. Jurisdiction is talking about what rights does this court have to hear this matter. It's just like something that goes on in our community, whereby maybe you are walking around and somebody called you and say, "This young girl, look at how you are dressing. Can you see your whole body showing up?" You'll be like, "Ma, please, I'm sorry. Like, how will you talk to me in that manner? Please, I'm sorry. What right do you have to tell me how to dress? Are you my mother? Are you my father? Like, what then concern you with my dressing?" For you, this old woman doesn't actually have the right to tell you how to dress. After all, he's not paying your school fees. She's not paying your school fees. She's not feeding you. Why your mother can comfortably tell you not to wear this one, she cannot for you. That is your own opinion. Now, the same thing applies to jurisdictions. You cannot, there are types of court, and that reminds me, for you to understand this course, you must know what we call hierarchy of courts. Hierarchy of court. If you don't understand hierarchy of court, you would probably not understand the jurisdictions of the court. Same way, if you don't understand the doctrine of judicial precedent, you will probably not understand these jurisdictions of the court. But what matters now as it connects hierarchy of courts is that in my previous video, which I encourage you to come to this channel and check, especially in the description boxes on the playlist on legal system and constitutional law, you can see videos there that borders on hierarchy of court and all this topic. Or you just type hierarchy of court by King's Advocate on your YouTube, it's going to show up. Now, when we are dealing with jurisdiction, it has everything to do with hierarchy of courts too, because jurisdictions is the power of a court to determine a matter. There are different types of courts. if issue happens as a lawyer, you know, I could remember before I become admitted or before I get deeper into this profession, I was thinking that all these courts, you can just go anywhere. For instance, if you are living in Independence, like my family, we are living in Independence layout. Now, like now, our second home in Enugu in Independence layout. I was thinking, okay, since Independence layout in Enugu is where most courts are located, it means that anything can happen and you can just go to any close court there and file your action. I was thinking that it is more of convenience, whether this court is more close to my yard or just like market. You can go to any market and buy something whenever you want, provided it's close to you or you want to go to that market. Same way I was thinking that is how court operates. That you can go to Sharia court if it is close to you. You can go to Federal High Court if you like. Until my second year, that is when I learned that if something happened, you cannot typically go to any court as a lawyer. And that is what I want you to learn today. Jurisdiction is the right of a court to decide a matter. Without that right, a court cannot decide a matter in your favor or against you. But the most important takeaway I want you to know is that jurisdiction is the heart of every case. As a matter of fact, in the case of Madukole against Ikemdelem, the court have made it clear, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has said that no matter how beautiful the proceeding of court is, no matter how diligent a judge is in doing justice to a particular matter, if it is discovered that that court lacks jurisdiction, that is the right to entertain that matter in the first place, everything that judge has decided is total nullity. If you want to understand constitutional law very well, if you want to know the authority you can cite, and even if the lecturer is sleeping, the lecturer will know that you know jurisdiction, you must be looking at the case of Ikemdelem and Madukolu, or Madukolu and Ikemdelem. It is a case that I have painstakingly summarized because of its importance in our website. I don't know if they are aware that this channel has a website of its own. So if you go to Google now and type Law Made Simple Legal, or for easy access of this case, you may probably type jurisdictions or case of Madukolu and Ikemdelem by Law Made Simple, and you shall see how I beautifully summarize that case for anyone who wishes to understand the jurisdictions of courts. If I have take light. Now, I just believe you can see me, right? So when we are talking about jurisdictions now, we are dealing with what? The right a court have to decide a matter. Whenever it is lacking, whatever you have done is total nullity. Now, let us talk about the import of courts lacking jurisdiction. Basically, we shall touch all these things, trust me. Now, when we are looking at import of court lacking jurisdiction, like I said, if a court lacks jurisdictions and it went ahead to entertain that matter, whatever he decided will become a total useless. The judgment will be nothing but a tissue of paper. It will be void. It will be totally void and nullity. That is how difficult jurisdiction is. Now, we talk about the sources of jurisdictions. When we are talking about sources of jurisdictions, we are asking a very fundamental question in law, which is, what rights, what are the laws that grants or that hand over jurisdiction to a court? I just want you to understand this topic. And if the lecturer is teaching it, the lecturer can never start the way I'm starting. They can just delve in and say you what jurisdiction is. From there, they talk about Supreme Court, they talk about the court, they talk about State High Court, the jurisdictional conflict. That is the best the lecturer can do for you. But if you don't follow it the way, that's why you are lucky to have come across this video. If it is somebody that sent you the link of this video, thank that person, because this topic will never be issue for you if you follow it the way we are following it. Now, we'll talk about the sources of jurisdiction. We are asking, what are those things that confer jurisdiction to a court? Is it your choice? Is it a question of choice? Is it a question of convenience? Is it just, any law that can confer? How will you know which court that has jurisdiction? What are the things that gives them that power? That is what we regard as sources of jurisdiction. One of the sources of jurisdiction, remember we are dealing with what? Sources of jurisdiction. One of the sources of jurisdiction, as far as any law is concerned, is not even only applicable in Nigeria, but also common law and any other legal system of the world. One of the sources is what? Constitution. Constitution. That is the chief of all sources when you has to do with what? Jurisdictions of the court. Now, by constitution, what do we mean? If you go to section 230 of the 1999 constitution, that is the section that created the Supreme Court. Section 232, compare it with what? Jurisdictions, appellate jurisdictions and original jurisdictions in so many cases. If you go to section 270 of the 1999 constitution, it created what? State High Court. Section 272 empowered the court with its jurisdictions with respect to State High Court. If you go to section 249 of the 1999 constitution, it created the Federal High Court. If you go to section 252, it gave the Federal High Court its own jurisdictions. When we now say jurisdiction, I believe you have understood what we mean. So it gives the court jurisdiction, simply see jurisdiction this way, the roles. That is where they should entertain, what issue they should entertain, and what issue they should not entertain. That is what jurisdiction means. Now, we are talking about that the Constitution is what creates the jurisdictions of any court. It is the Constitution that will create you, the court, tell you which area you should go into and area you should not go into. And in a situation whereby you move from your own schedule, maybe they say that State High Court, you are saddled with the responsibility of land matter. You went ahead and be talking about an issue that has to do with customs. I'm not talking about customary law, I'm talking about customs and duty that has to do with importation. You are moving from your jurisdictions. Let me say now, magistrate court, you have the right to try many offenses. You went ahead and talk about treason felony, which is one of the capital offense anybody can commit in the state. You are moving from your what? Jurisdictions. That's why we can say, see, young man, you are extending your boundary. You are moving from your jurisdiction. This is not within your power. Respect yourself. We are simply saying the court, you are bound by that thing the Constitution has given you. And don't move out of here, no matter how good you want to be. Now, another sources is what? Statute. And by statute is not different from the Constitution. This simply means that if there are times a court will be created or a law will be created, and that statute that created that law will vest a particular court with the jurisdiction to entertain any matter that regard to the violation of it. I have an example. Where is my book? This thing is my Freedom of Information Act. Freedom of Information Act is basically a law that grants anybody the right to know what is going on within any government agency. You can through this in and request for information concerning INEC, their mode of operandi, and you will rely on this and you will get what you want. But the courts that has to do with anything, like if you have issue, maybe you want to get information, they deny you, and you are suing using Freedom of Information Act as a basis of claim. You cannot move to any court. You cannot go to Supreme Court. You cannot go to State High Court. You cannot go to Magistrate Court. You cannot just carry yourself and go to Industrial Court. Are we together? But you must follow the court that has been provided here. Which court is provided here? If you know, tell me in the comment section. I will not tell you. If you know, just tell me in the comment section. There is a court that is provided that has to do with that very matter. But if you don't know, you can ask me and I will tell you. Now, on the comment section, you can ask me. Another sources again is judicial precedent. So there are times, we all know that judicial precedent, that's why I said in the beginning, you must know doctrine of judicial precedent. There are times case laws form part of our corpus juris. Not there are times. Case law forms corpus juris of our legal jurisprudence. If you are a person that followed part 1 on the introduction to second semester topic on constitutional law legal system, which is still here on this channel, you will see when I talk about sources of law. Case law is another thing. So assuming now there is no law that are governing a particular court that has jurisdiction over a particular thing, and repeatedly one court has been exercising jurisdiction repeatedly, it becomes clear that it is this court that has jurisdiction. So whenever issue of jurisdiction arose or arises tomorrow, one party can simply say, please, this court, you don't have jurisdiction over this matter by so reason, because authority has been decided that it is this court that has jurisdiction over this matter. Another very important thing is what? Remember, we talk about case law as what? Forming part of the sources of jurisdiction. That is what confers court jurisdiction. Well, we have also what we call rules of court. By rules of court, we simply mean that each court, apart from our laws, each court has the modus operandi of how you file an action there. So sometimes some courts can have rules that necessitate or prohibit any action that can be filed under it. That is what we mean by rules of court. Now we shall examine types of jurisdiction because it is a very important aspect. Now, over types of jurisdiction, we have under types of jurisdiction, we have what? Basic types of jurisdiction. When by types of jurisdiction, we basically means what are those types of things that determine the jurisdictions of the court. Sources is talking about what can give the court the power it has. How will you know that this court is what? In fact, what gives the court their power in the first place? Where did they source their jurisdiction? Where do they get their power to decide? That is sources. But types we are talking about then, what are the forms of things that can be put in place to determine jurisdictions? So we have subject matter jurisdiction. Subject matter is laying emphasis on the fact that what happens in a case can probably decide which court that should have jurisdiction. A good example of them, we all know this, there is civil matter and there is criminal matter. There are some certain courts that doesn't entertain anything that has to do with criminal matter. A good example of them is now, should I say tribunal, presidential petition tribunal, or just electoral petition tribunal. They don't have anything to do with criminal law. They only borders on what? civil matters. Are we together? That is just the little I want you to understand it. Then we have territorial jurisdictions. Territorial jurisdiction has everything to do with the site or the locale of the court. A good example is this. Let us say that somebody breach, you are a businessman, you are a Dangote. Please claim me to, or Adedola. Now, you are Dangote or Adedola, or let me say you are Dangote, and you are dealing with Adedola, a business transaction with Adedola. Adedola owns a printing press in Anambra State, but you are living in Lagos. So you contacted Adedola to deliver a particular quantum of printing machine to you, or printing material to you. You have paid Adedola, and Adedola and their team of company breached that contract. You are in Lagos. You cannot just carry your bag, carry your shoe as a lawyer and go and institute action against Adedola in Lagos State High Court. As a matter of fact, when you shall come to State High Court, when we shall treat court, I will tell you how jurisdictions of matter, whether contract, civil, how does they operate. Each law has, each area of law we study, like contract, all of them have court you can likely go to when action arose. So you cannot comfortably now go and institute action against Adedola printing press in Anambra in Lagos State High Court because of what? Territorial jurisdiction. So you will be checking at where does the site of action of that company lie. Now, action of Adedola company lies in Anambra State. If you go to Lagos State High Court, you are basically wasting your time. Remember the Latin maxim that said, "Let's congit ad impossibile." Let's congit ad impossibile. The law will never command impossible. So you don't expect a Lagos State High Court to properly enforce a judgment in Anambra State. It's very difficult for them. So that's why the court have created the State High Court in all states. The right court to go is Anambra State High Court. Even though you are based in Lagos, but since you are suing a company that has breached, which is the defendant, you must go to the defendant place where the court can bind him. But when you come to equity, you will still see that sometimes you can go, even if it happened in Anambra, you can sue in Lagos. But the subject, the issue different. I don't want to teach, I don't want to bother you with that because it's something you are going to learn in equitable, jurisdictions when you shall be treating equity possibly in your 400 level or 300 level. Now, but the gist of the matter is that territory is a very condition precedent when you are dealing with jurisdictions. Now we talk about pecuniary jurisdiction. The general rule is this: there are some matters that serve us on a huge amount of money that magistrate court should not be entertaining. But if you go to magistrate court and they refuse and still entertain the matter, it will be declared null and void because they lack that pecuniary strength, in the sense that it is not all issue that a court can entertain that has to do with a large quantum of money. We also have personal jurisdictions. This is still the thing I talked about when it has to do with territorial jurisdiction. So see it, opposite of territorial jurisdiction is personal jurisdictions. Let me say now, Adedola, you and Adedola own a company like printing press in Anambra State, but you too, you are living in Lagos. You and Adedola contracted in Lagos. Adedola is also based in Lagos. You and Adedola contracted in Lagos for a sale of a particular land in Anambra State. Now, you have paid Adedola, you have furnished the contract for a sale of a particular land in Anambra State. You people have exchanged everything. In fact, Adedola and you people are doing business in Lagos. So if you want to sue Adedola refused to, we are paid, but Adedola refused to then give you the title to the land. In this case, you can rightly institute an action in Lagos State High Court mandating Adedola to do a particular thing, which is giving you the right of contract, the deed of conveyancing, which is basically to assign the deed of conveyancing to you. Please, I don't want to confuse if I have not offered conveyancing law. It simply means you can institute an action against Adedola, even though the land you people are dealing on is in Anambra State. But because you people transacted, and the transaction is to the effect that Adedola have to confer a land to you, which you have paid, because you may not necessarily have to come back to Anambra to sue Adedola when two of you are doing business in Lagos, but the transaction of the land is within the outside of the jurisdictions of Lagos State High Court. I just pray you understand. But the bone of contention here is, if you people are now declaring about who owns land in Anambra State, let me say you and your brother are dragging land, who owns land in Anambra State. Whether two of you are living in Lagos and you went and sue in Lagos, it is completely useless. But because that one has to do with what ownership of land, it is only court in Anambra that can properly examine who owns the land. But assuming it is certain that Adedola and you transacted on a particular contract for the conveyance of your own land to him, who there is evidence that is payment and all those things, the court can give injunction that you move from Lagos and give Adedola that land. That is what we mean by personal jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction has to do with the ability of a court to enforce a judgment on you, mandating you to do a particular thing. Territorial has to do with what? The lex situs, that is the matter, the subject matter of litigation. That is the thing of litigation. Why personal has to do with what? In person. That's what it is on this basis that we begin to talk about equity act in rem and equity act in personam. I don't want to bother you, but the only thing I have to tell you is that the court can exercise personal jurisdiction, mandating you or acting on you as a person. Territorial jurisdiction, the court will act on the thing itself. So whenever you are suing the court to act on a property or anything itself, you must check the territorial scope of the court, whether the court have the capacity to do that. But whenever you want to court to enforce somebody to obey a particular thing, regardless of whichever court, the court, every court in any way have right to enforce anybody to do a particular thing. That is what I want you to know. Then we have appellant jurisdiction. What is appellant jurisdiction? Appellant jurisdiction is the simplest one which all of us should know. Appellant jurisdiction has everything to do with what? The court that can entertain a matter when the matter have moved from court of first instance. For instance, now under Nigeria, we have state high court, federal high court, and all those court before we get to. So a good examples of appellant court is court of appeal and Supreme Court, meaning that you cannot sit on federal high court and begin to question another federal high court. State high court may exercise appellant jurisdiction when it is superintending over magistrate court. That is when you can say that. Then we have what? Exclusive and concurrent jurisdiction. This one is very important. Exclusive jurisdiction means that it is only this court that have exclusive right over this matter. Regardless of whatever happened, regardless of whatever territory, you must go to this court. A good example is Federal High Court. If you go to section 252 of the 1999 Constitution, it confers Federal High Court the right to entertain anything that has to do with government, federal government, and any other persons, agencies. For instance, if you are suing Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, or Unilag, you must go to Federal High Court, either in Anambra, if they have one, or Federal High Court in Lagos State when you are suing Unilag. Because Unilag is an agency of federal government, and it is only Federal High Court that can deal with any issue concerning government, federal government, and any other person. Then we have concurrent jurisdiction. Concurrent jurisdiction means that this court can entertain it, State High Court can hear it, Federal High Court can hear it. You only obtain concurrent jurisdiction when it has to do with State High Court. For instance, anything Anambra State High Court can hear, Enugu State High Court can hear it. That is what we mean by concurrent jurisdictions. Now, what I want you to take away from this whole thing is the clear principle that is very important. Whenever you are dealing with jurisdictions of the courts, you must understand that the jurisdiction is the life wire, the fulcrums, the first end to ringo, the barriers of every right of a court to decide matter. Without it, no matter how well principled the judgment look or sounds, it will be a complete nullity. And authority here is case of Madukolu and Ikem Delem. If you have not read that case and you don't plan to read it and you want to pass constitutional law, God just bless you because you are doing well. Now, I want you to know that if you want to talk about the determinant of jurisdiction, remember what we have been discussing is number 4. Let us talk about the determinant of jurisdictions. The determinant means how can you ascertain what decide a jurisdiction. That is what we want to consider now.